And it was just like, Mom, you got to download this game for me. And she's like, well, sorry, I'm in the middle of like a keynote address for hundreds of people.
Was there any resolution to that story? Like, what?
Oh my gosh.
Hi, you're listening to Pop-Up Podcasting. We make podcasting easy, so stick around for tips, tricks, and a behind-the-scenes look at the podcast industry. Hey, I'm Lisa, and in this episode, JP, Will, Ashlee, and I are talking all about remote sessions, how they work, the do's and don'ts, and funny stories.
What platforms have you tried for remote sessions?
Like just the ones JP tells me to try. That's all I've tried.
I'm a real taskmaster that way.
But I mean, like not other,
no.
like I don't get into that kind of stuff. So if you're like, Zoom's the best one, I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
I love Zoom.
Fair enough. I mean, we as a company use primarily Zoom, and there's a few reasons for that. And right now we're recording this over Zoom, and the thing we do with some of our clients when quality is really of the utmost importance is we record individually on each guest's end, and we have some ways of doing that are documented on our website. Yeah, and that's what we're doing now. So we're communicating over Zoom, but we're recording individually, and then Ashlee's going to put those files together. And like Ashlee might be hearing as she's recording this over Zoom, those Zoom dropouts and those kind of weird sound issues that crop up on the internet. But because we're recording individually on our own computers as well, the finished product's not going to have any of that. So that's kind of how we do it. There are a bunch of other platforms that people use, and that we've used Skype. We used to use Skype a lot more in the studio before, in the pre-pandemic days. The one thing that I've been intrigued by, but haven't really gone into very much, is there's platforms that automate the process of what we're doing right now, like Squadcast and Riverside FM. And I used one a long time ago called Ringer. There's another one that's really popular, Zencaster, that's more sort of audio focused. And I've looked into using these for us and for our clients, and they all end up having some fatal flaw that just makes it not work. For us anyway. We always like to record a backup. Some of them don't play well with recording simultaneously a backup. And then if your main recording fails, then you lose the whole thing. And then ease of use is really, really important. Like, we want the process to go really smoothly for our clients and for their guests, and to let them talk about what they want to talk about as quickly and smoothly as possible, right? We don't want to put up a lot of barriers to that. So that's a big reason we've landed on Zoom. Zoom allows us to record multiple tracks so that if somebody's dog barks while I'm telling a profound story, we can edit those two layers separately and take out the dog barking. Platforms like Microsoft Teams don't let you do that. And Zoom works well with our backup recording process. And it also just is something that people are familiar with and easy to use. And us focusing on one platform as opposed to jumping around to whatever our clients want also means that we can become experts in this platform and like really easily tell people how to make sure their microphone is set properly and different things like that. So that's kind of what's out there and why we've landed on Zoom.
Beautiful.
What would you say are best practices, I guess, or like what should you have ready before a remote session?
Yeah, just Ashlee, are you meaning on like on our end or on like the guest's end?
I mean, both, if you wanted to talk about on our end as well, but I guess mostly like on the guest's end of things.
Yeah, like on the guest side, I mean, there's a number of things, and like JP said, with the prevalence of virtual communication now, it's gotten a little bit easier, as a lot of people have sort of adopted a lot of those best practices because it's part of their like work day and everything too, not just part of like whatever podcast they've been asked to be on. But headphones, you can say it, you shout it to the sky basically, because it's, it just makes such a big difference. Notifications plays in with the headphones as well too, right? They'll tell you, oh yeah, my phone's on silent. Oh yeah, I think I turned off the ones on my computer. And it's like, well, did you? And then of course, it's going to ding when they're, inevitably covering whatever profound story or life experience they're sharing. Stress the importance of headphones. A lot of people will have external mics now, but one of the things that it's sure you've plugged in your external mic and you're positioned close to it and you're speaking into it. But, when you go in and check that little menu in Zoom, is it just set to your default internal one, which, can sometimes happen, especially you might have the equipment, but maybe not necessarily the know-how. So it's some little things like that, kind of the little details, which is, a lot of the times where we come into play is if a client was just running it on their own, they might just be happy to sit down and press record and start going. But that's when I think is part of our value added, right? Is that we're able to sort of check those boxes to make sure that everyone's set up for success beforehand. Because a lot of the times you might think it's straightforward, and Zoom is to a certain extent, but there can be little hiccups as well too. So
yeah, I guess the only other thing I would add is that when we're facilitating a session on Zoom, that means the guest and host are coming to us through the internet. So a bad internet connection can do a lot of damage to an episode just because you can have a lot of dropouts or some of the words can start to sound digital. So just to try to ensure that you have a good internet connection, and bonus points if you have a laptop that has an Ether port. So if you have a cable for your internet at home, you can just plug it in directly. And then that'll make like a more solid connection.
Yeah. And I think, jumping off of that, having some awareness of what else is happening on your home network and maybe some control over that is helpful. And this is getting into the technical weeds a little bit, but if you know your internet connection is not very reliable for these things, you can do things like turning off your online backup or your OneDrive sync or your Google Drive or your Dropbox, things like that are eating up bandwidth in the background, in these COVID days, trying to schedule things around maybe other family members who are doing online learning or online work meetings, basically, so the tubes aren't clogged with other stuff when you're trying to record your podcast.
Yeah. And I had a session this past week where it's an audio podcast, but the video was going just because we record that as a backup, just as an option as well for this particular client. And there was tons of dropouts. So we ended up turning off the video and that solved the problem.
Right. Yeah. So because the video is taking up, even more bandwidth than the audio. So yeah, we tend to leave it on these days for a lot of clients just because people want that nonverbal communication side of things. But if it's causing problems, for sure, it's good to turn it off.
And I know, Will, you brought up headphones, which obviously is like key importance to us. Maybe it's worth quickly just mentioning, did you mention already why people should have headphones?
I just touched on more so the notification side, but you're thinking more for noise bleed and feedback and everything?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Noise bleed has been an issue for me in the past with certain recordings. And I'm trying to think there's another reason why, but sometimes Zoom, doesn't it do something where it will cancel somebody out quicker when they're coming through the speaker versus headphones? And it almost sounds like it's interrupting them finishing their thought.
Yeah, the phenomenon that we hear in Zoom meetings a lot where essentially, each voice sort of, cancels out the other is because of Zoom's sort of echo cancellation. So because Lisa and I are both wearing headphones, this doesn't happen. But if Lisa, started talking over me and I wasn't wearing headphones, her voice would come out of my speakers and go into my microphone, and Zoom would be like, okay, well, we don't want a feedback situation. So I'm basically going to cut JP's microphone. And then you don't hear the end of my sentence. So yeah, we've run into that a lot, and it's definitely a struggle to get clients to wear headphones as often as we would like. But it's, everything we say to our clients is in the service of a better finished product. It's not just because we're dictators and we like to boss people around.
What are some issues or some funny stories that you guys have run into during this past year?
Like because that are COVID related?
Well, not COVID related,
like somebody
but like
getting
remote
sick,
related.
like that. No, I'm just kidding.
It's always hilarious.
One of our guests getting sick.
I can hop in. I've had a couple of good ones, not necessarily on like a traditional podcast recording. It's been more ones where there's like there is like a live audience at the time. And I've had a couple like sort of, just would never have happened if you weren't working from home, where there was a woman giving a introduction to a very large conference, hundreds of people in attendance, and her son, you could hear, like, she was on video as well too, and you could see her like look up, and she was clearly looking at something on the other side of her camera, and she started kind of gesturing with a hand to like sort of like a shooing gesture. And her son just appears on camera, and it was just like asking her to download, I don't know, some game, who knows what. I'm sure it was very important, but being like, "Mom, you got to download this game for me." And she's like, "Well, sorry, I'm in the middle of like a keynote address for hundreds of people." She's like, "Get your father to do it," probably also working from home. And the kid's like, "Oh, he doesn't know how to do anything." And so like, I guess went to the father already, was not satisfied with the effort he was giving, and transitioned over to the mom. But so she's having to sort of like barter with her son over whether or not she can have this time to finish her keynote. And her video just dropped. She disconnected. She just dropped off. So, and I still don't know to this day I assume that the son, like, I don't know if he hit power or what he did, but she, just totally dropped off of it. And, and that's a person who was not prepared to speak to hundreds of people has to hop in and try and smooth things over and go from there, which was hilarious.
My favorite one that I've encountered so far was actually with Will. I was in on a session with him, and everybody involved in the session heard this, and I never heard it in the moment. I guess I just maybe wasn't paying attention. But when I went back to edit it, it was like the guys that were hosting, their guest, I should say, in the background, there was a blood-curdling scream. That little clip literally plays rent-free in my head all the time. And I'll just think of it randomly and probably for the rest of my life. But like, that was fun. That was very fun.
Ashlee, was there any resolution to that story? Like, what?
I don't think so.
I don't even think we addressed it in the moment. Like,
no,
I think
we never did.
Like, you just kept like the interview going. Like, no one was like, is everyone like?
Nobody even flinched.
Yeah,
that's why I was like, I had no idea that happened until I went to go edit it.
Yeah, I definitely dropped a marker when it happened, but I think that was the only reaction.
I'll say also, we've talked a lot about the things that can go wrong, but it's been interesting to switch over to doing things remotely during COVID. And I mean, from the perspective of our business and our ability to serve our clients, like, it's been kind of cool because we've had a lot of times where, the three of us are running sessions simultaneously from our homes, which, having only one studio, we weren't able to do that before. So that's been kind of cool. And then our clients also, some of them were only interested or only looking for local guests before the pandemic. And once we started doing things remotely, that sort of opened up their eyes to, we can bring somebody in from another country or another city. That's been pretty cool. And then, also clients we never would have had come to us pre-COVID have found us online. And the emphasis that we now have on remote recording has led to some interesting work, like Craig Gibson's The Crow Patrol that we mentioned in another episode. He lives in the US, in another country, and brings in guests from all over, mostly all over the US. That's been kind of a cool silver lining to, not the greatest year in other ways.
Ended on a positive note.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks for checking out Pop-Up Podcasting, podcasting made easy. If you're interested in learning more about podcasting or starting your own podcast, you can find us at popuppodcasting.ca, where you can download our free guide, Podcasting at Work.